Hi, welcome to Week in Review, where we look at some of the headlines making news. I'm Phil O'Connor, the Live Enterprise Director, joined by my esteemed colleagues again this week. We've got Ben Felder from the Watchdog Desk, Darnell Mayberry from the Toy Box and Sports. I guess I shouldn't always say that about
National award-winning Toy Box.
Okay, good.
Get it right, Phil.
I appreciate that. And my old pal, Don Mecoy from the Business Desk. A lot of stuff again this week, I always say that, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this city. That's part of the reason we have this show and why you should subscribe to our paper. Ben, big news in the school district, always a tumultuous time whenever they talk about closing schools.
Oklahoma City Public Schools is trying to shore up or trying to cut $10 million from the budget going into next year. The Oklahoman's Tim Willard reported this week that Superintendent Aurora Laura said that school closures are being considered, that the district is looking at schools with an enrollment of fewer than 300 students, of which there are 12 schools in the district with enrollment below that threshold, saying that closing some of those schools, maybe not all 12, but some of those schools would help them kind of consolidate costs and save some money. School closures have happened in the history of the district for the last few decades. There's a lot of concern, obviously, for any school that right now is under that threshold, and there are schools across the district that have below 300 students. There are 5 schools below 300 in the northeast part of the city. That's a predominantly African-American part of town, which has seen decades of school closures, and a lot of changes there. And so, this isn't a new conversation. Superintendents and school leaders have been talking about school closures for the last few years, especially as budget cuts have worsened. But it seems like right now that the district is getting more serious about the idea.
And of course, there's also discussion about changing the 6th grade makeup in some of these school buildings.
Yeah, some schools have, some elementary schools have 6th grades, a lot do, some don't. Then some of the middle schools that they feed into have 6th grade. And so there's some conversation about trying to kind of get everyone on the same page and moving 6th grade back up to the middle school. One of the social realities of this is when you look at, the Oklahoma City public school system is very segregated. It is a minority-majority district, mostly Hispanic, but you have schools that are, either the vast majority of students are either Hispanic or African American. You do have some schools that do draw from some affluent and mainly white communities. The schools are still a minority majority, but a lot of those elementary schools see a big drop off in students when they move from elementary to middle school. The percentage of white students, of affluent students in elementary school is much higher than it is in middle school. That's a break in which we see a lot of families turn to other options such as private school or maybe even leaving for other suburban districts. So a lot of things to take in consideration. Some elementary schools are saying, hey, this is an opportunity, having 6th grade allows us to keep and retain some of our students, but for a lot of elementary schools that 6th grade year is quite small, and so the district is obviously targeting that.
And I think you also face the chicken and egg situation there, which is, you want stable neighborhoods, but one of the key components of a stable neighborhood is a neighborhood school often.
Yeah, and I think that's,
if you keep closing the neighborhood schools, how stable will the neighborhood remain?
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of skepticism when you start talking about school closures, especially in northeast Oklahoma City. I mean, they've seen several of their schools closed, over the past few decades, and even 10 years ago, a handful were closed. And there's some concern in that community about, are these decisions going to be racially motivated? I can't say that the decisions today will be racially motivated, but the reason that how we got here was, when you look at the early 70s, Oklahoma City Public Schools had 71,000 students in 1971. The next year, a court-ordered busing program went into place. Within 10 years, the enrollment decreased almost in half, and especially in northeast Oklahoma City. And so, this is a time when you saw 30,000 white students leave the district, and it really kind of decimated some of the schools, it decimated the structure of the school district, and we're still kind of living with those consequences or living with that reality today.
Is there a time frame on this of when they hope to make a decision or let people know?
Well, they're talking about trying to cut $10 million from the budget for next year. So I would imagine that if, to do that, they would have to make some announcement going into the 17-18 school year. But we are now entering the part where it's been reported. Like I said, Tim Willard kind of broke this news this week. So it'll give communities, parents, and community leaders a chance to speak up on this, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of response there is, and it may lead the board to think, hey, let's go in a different direction here.
You're right. Tim's done an outstanding job covering that story, and I'm sure he will in the future. Don, let's switch over to the healthcare field. Mega merger that we thought was on the books apparently is now off.
Yeah, it was announced with great fanfare. You had two major hospitals. You had St. Anthony Hospital and its parent, SSM Health, announcing that they were going to merge together with the OU Medical Center, two facilities that are about 2 miles apart on 10th Street, and they were going to come together, and they just a few months ago announced that this was going to mean more investment into the Health Sciences Center, which is also the home of the OU Medical School, OU physicians. It's a huge undertaking. And now it was announced just this week that it's off. And there was a very brief press release that was issued jointly by both sides saying the deal's off. They were very tight-lipped about what had happened, although there was one statement in there that said it's very difficult to bring together a nonprofit health center with a private Catholic-run health center. And there were issues, something that came up at the very beginning of this about, what do you do with these women's health services that Catholic-run hospitals don't want to be involved in, and they talked about carving out an entity that would be separate. But that's the only clue that we really got about what may have happened. There's also been some change in the leadership of SSM Health since this thing was first announced. That may have played a role. We really don't know. They sent us the news and said we really don't have any comment further about this.
Was it viewed as when the initial merger was announced, was it viewed as a positive essentially, or was that viewed as a narrowing of choices or whatever? I don't know.
Well, I think it was viewed as a positive thing, particularly for OU, which is run right now by a big for-profit company, HCA. OU has been successful, and they've told us, that even since HCA took over back, I think in '99 or 2000, that OU Medical Center has been successful. It has been profitable, but there were issues, and they were looking for ways to grow. They were looking for some change, and now they're back to their plan from before the SSM merger was announced, which is OU will buy back control of OU Medical Center from HCA, which I guess is not interested in maintaining control of that.
Interesting. Well, we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Huge money involved in that possible merger if it was to go through. Developments out on up near our old offices on the Broadway extension. This talk of a possible theater, or am I confusing two here?
No, you got it right.
Okay.
This is up near Wilshire and Broadway Extension, property that at one point in the past was owned by this company and now is owned by American Fidelity. There's a guy who wants to develop a movie theater there, but it's a new kind of concept where people sit at long tables. It looks like a college classroom almost, with its tiers and then tables in front of you, so they can serve food and drink while you watch movies. Warren Theaters, as many people know, actually does serve food and drink during movies, but only in balconies that are restricted for adults only. You can only go in there. You can get drinks. You can get alcohol, but you must be 21 years old to go in there. This would be a different concept. It would treat a movie theater more like a restaurant. So they need this law to go through that's currently under consideration out at the state capitol to make that change. This is a concept that's worked a lot of different places. I know this company has a theater in Austin, Texas. It's called Flicks Brew Pub or something like that. But so anyway, they want that change in the law, and then they want to move forward and have this kind of service.
I wonder if they'd have soup on the menu. You'd have the guy slurping the soup all through the movie next to you.
They actually addressed that. That question came up about eating and what they serve, as I understand it, for the most part, is like wraps, sandwiches, hand food. So you don't even get silverware. You get plates, you get your food, you get your drink. There's not going to be a lot of clanging forks and knives and slurping of soup. So.
Darnell, what do you think? Would you go?
Smart. I would go. I've been to the Warren Theater. It's an awesome place to go.
Ben?
Yeah, watch at home. I can eat whatever I want then, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's an interesting concept. We'll see how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, and that's, some people had actually written in, our Jack Money wrote the story, and some people said, hey, who wants to go to the movie theaters up at Wilshire and Broadway? And he pointed out who was going to Moore to go to the movies before the Warren Theater was built, and they draw traffic from North Oklahoma City, Edmond.
I would think that stretch from Wilshire into downtown, those giant tracts of vacant land would be, halfway between Edmond and Oklahoma City. You think that would be a perfect spot?
That's an area that's really drawn a lot of interest over the years. People are really, that land has changed hands several times, and there's been different concepts, and at some point it's going to be developed. I mean, there's a medical just north of our old building on Britain. There's a kind of a medical community developing there, so that's going to be developed, and so it seems like a good spot.
A lot happening up there, that's for sure. All right, Darnell, College Pro Day this week. A lot of people in to take a look at some of the athletes at OU and OSU.
Yeah, OU held its pro day on Wednesday down in Norman. The big name was Joe Mixon, obviously. He did not get invited to the NFL Combine last week because of his off-field incidents. But he really had an impressive pro day. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, which is a really fast time, and impressed some scouts with his workout and his talents physically. D.D. Westbrook was another guy who really stood out. He ran a 4.34 40, which is obviously even faster than Joe Mixon, the speedy wide receiver that OU had last year. Bolitnikoff winner, I believe. He won the award. So, really good day for OU prospects. And then OSU had they had its pro day on Thursday, and they had some standouts as well. Chris Carson, wide receiver Jawan Seals, and linebacker Jordan Burton, all would have ranked in the top 3 in the NFL Combine at their respective positions last week. Jawan Seals really stood out with a 41.5-inch vertical leap that would have led all wide receivers at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. It would have ranked second at the NFL Combine. Chris Carson had a phenomenal vertical leap, too, for running back. All of those guys would have ranked in the top 3. So very, very impressive days out of some prospects at OU and OSU.
Yeah, I think Joe Mixon kind of blew people away with his showing in a lot of ways, just his speed and his leaping ability and everything else. It's going to be really – what's the projection for Joe Mixon these days?
It's all over the board right now. A lot of people feel because of the off-field incidents, he's not going to be a first-day guy. He might slip into the second round, third round even. Some people might take him in the fourth round. But he is a top 15 talent, just in terms of sheer talent alone. There aren't 15 guys better than him in this year's NFL draft. So all it takes is one. Some team is going to take a chance on him, and they're going to go out and try to get a very, very talented running back who can do a lot of different things on the field.
I seem to recall a player at Oklahoma State who had a little trouble, and he seems to be doing pretty well in the NFL with the Chiefs these days.
The difference between Tyreek Hill from Oklahoma State and Joe Mixon from Oklahoma is there was no video on Tyreek Hill and his off-field incidents. Joe Mixon's video is out there. Whatever team takes him, they're going to have to face that video, and it's going to be flooded by their fans. They're going to see it. That's going to be a lot of negative reaction. So that's a big difference when there's video.
Again, it's the NFL, and it's pro football, and they want to win.
Yeah, the bottom line is to win.
If somebody has an opportunity to get another Tyreek Hill in the third or fourth round, I don't think that video is going to mean a lot. I just think somebody will certainly draft that guy. There's no doubt about that.
And like I said, all it takes is one. So if one team takes a chance on him, I mean, he's in. He's going to make a career for himself and move on with his life.
Let's talk about the greatest thing going on in the world right now, the Big 12 tournament.
And why is that the greatest thing going on?
I don't
right
know.
now?
Let's just talk. What's happened in the last couple of days?
Well, TCU beat your arch rival, Kansas, as a proud Kansas State alum.
Never a sad day to see.
So that was the biggest news of the Big 12 tournament yesterday. Shocking upset. Kansas was the number 1 seed, one of the best teams in the country. TCU had just lost down in Norman to OU, and then they come back and beat OU to knock them out of the tournament on the first day. And then all of a sudden, they upset Kansas with a big, big win. So that was the biggest news. But for the local schools, just not a good showing early in the tournament. They both lost their first games. Again, OU to TCU. Oklahoma State couldn't hold off Iowa State yesterday. So it was a tough loss for OU and OSU, both in the first round of the Big 12 tournament.
It's a great time of year. I know you're an NBA fan, not so much a college fan. For me, this is the golden time of year.
When you said the greatest thing, I thought we were going to talk about Russell Westbrook.
Russell Westbrook had another triple-double.
He did. I heard that, but that's not really important. What's important today is, and then there was a second game last night. Another team that maybe wasn't expected to win, I believe.
It's like the consolation bracket, wasn't it?
No, not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
The Kansas State Wildcats won over Baylor, so you have that going. I think the tournament shows. I can't tell if it shows that the Big 12 is again going to do what it always does, which is they're not as good as we think they are because everybody can beat everybody, or is it showing the strength of the Big 12? And I actually think Jamie Dixon has TCU going in the right direction. I hate to say that. I actually think they have a good team. They won't make the tournament this year, but that's a good team headed in the right direction with the coach. And, and I'm torn about, my Wildcats because I'm not sure Bruce Weber is our future. I'm afraid after last night, he is our future. So we'll see. Everybody wanted Brad Underwood.
I was going to say, Oklahoma State better pay him because Kansas State is right there lurking. As an alum of Kansas State, they're lurking right there.
I can tell you the alumni want that guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, hopefully we'll be back again next week to talk about a Big 12 championship. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, listen, that's the kind of information you get at newsok.com. In the Oklahoman, subscribe, check us out online. We'll be here again next week. Thanks for watching.